In this video, I'll be attempting to make the infamous Dinosaur game from scratch, using C++ and SFML. So let's go. If you don't know the basic gameplay of the game that I'm going to remake, here's how it works. Basically, there's this dinosaur that runs for some reason, and it jumps to avoid obstacles. The goal here is to survive for as long as possible, because the game will get faster and hence making it hard to time the jump. It should be pretty simple to remake this. So the first thing I did was I made a basic window with a white background. Added a FPS timer too, cause why not? Next thing I did was I imported the player sprite sheet into the game. But in the original game, the dinosaur had the ability to jump when you press the space button. So I added that feature to the game. So let's test it out.
A few moments later.
Okay, I rewrote the jumping code again. Now it should work. And it did. If you're wondering how it works, here's the logic. Basically, the dino jumps when the space key is pressed and if it's on the ground. After it jumps, we decrease the constant of the y velocity to make it seem like a gravitational force is dragging it down, hence it won't jump in the air forever. After it reaches the ground though, the dino will stop moving. Now that I implemented jumping, it is time to add animations to the dino. The way I did it is I made an array of data called frames, which each one contains a class called SFInteract, which is part of the SFML's library function that allows me to get the specific part of a texture. Then after that, I use this function to iterate to the sprites every 5 frames in the update loop. So as you can see here, we got a working animation. There are some problems though. Like at first, the sprite seems to be offsetting to the left at some point. I completely ignored this because this is a problem in the sprite image not having uniform padding. I could fix it, but then again, I don't feel like it. The second problem I need to fix though, whether I feel like it or not, is to make sure the animation doesn't play if the player is in the air. There we go. Now that's out of the way, it was time to add the ground to the game. The ground is pretty simple. I just drew the specific part of the image ground using a SFInteract. And then I add an offset to make it so that the ground is moving, when in reality nothing really is. And then the offset resets to 0 when it reaches the end of the image minus the window size. I subtracted the image to the window size because if I didn't, then this would happen. Now there is no dinosaur game without obstacles. So the first thing I did was I made a class called obstacle. Basically simplifying what this class function does is, it first loads a texture to the game, then on the update loop, I start a timer. And when it passes, let's say 6 seconds, I push back an element of a vector called obstacle. The obstacle struct contains a bounce, which is needed for collision detection, and the sprite of the obstacle. Then I randomly select any texture for that loaded sprite and reset the timer. Then I go through every part of the obstacle and move them to the left. Took me quite a while to actually get it work, but it's working for now. There's another problem I faced though. As the object passes through the player in the window, the obstacle is still getting processed in the CPU even though it's not getting displayed in the window. So technically we created a memory leak. We have to fix it. So all I did was I checked the obstacle in the update loop if it passes the window position. If it did, then I delete the vector element. Now it works like a charm. Before I added the collision detection, I tried to implement a score system to the game just like the original. Basically, the scores add up just like how the animation counter works. The scores add up to a value of 1 if the score index is greater than 5. Then the score index resets to 0. Then after incrementing the score, I use that data to convert it to a text and display it to the window. And it works. The text is not correctly aligned like the original, but that will be fixed for later. Now I need to add a collision. Collision detection is easy to implement in SFML, because SFML has a function specifically made to check if two objects intersect. So I use that function to check to see if any of the objects intersect the player. If that returns true, then I set the player dead boolean value to be true. The player dead boolean value determines if the player needs to run or not. There were some problems at first, but after some attempts I got it to work. Now the basic gameplay is done. Now all that's left to do is add a game state manager. Well, basically a class that manages a game over state and the playing state. Making this is easy. I just write a reset function for every class that I've created. And when the player is dead, the game state manager draws a restart button. And if that button is pressed and the player is dead, I reset every class object that exists in the game and the game restarts. After that I added the high score system to the game. It basically works by checking the score is greater than the current high score. If it is, then I rewrite the high score to be that value. Oh, and I also fixed the position of the high scored value as well. The other things I added to make the game more like the original are the clouds. The clouds logic worked the same as the obstacles. I made a struct called cloud that contains a sprite object, and then I push back the element of the cloud into the vector every time the timer resets. After adding the clouds, one last thing I did to finish making the game is making it so that the game gets faster as you play more of the game. Then I added a sound for polishing, and it's done. Here's a basic gameplay. Although there are a lot of things I need to add like the birds and the night mode, it's more or less finished. If you want to check out the game, you can check out the GitHub repository, but I would warn you, I wrote everything in one main file, so it's a bit of a mess. I'll try to fix that in the near future, but it's like that for now. If you enjoy watching the video and you want to watch more like this in the future, then be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.